Hey everybody, welcome to CTO Confidential. Today I'm here with Bart Lewin, who is an industry veteran to software development, software agency development, and as well as a current entrepreneur consultant. Really, you've got a new consulting business that you're kicking off, and that we met at a CTO luncheon that you had sponsored, but it really revolves around this idea of non-equity financing, which I thought was so cool and so interesting, especially these days where VC capital is hard to come by, and it doesn't involve loans, which is another unique piece to this. So I was very keen to have you on the show. Bart, welcome.
Thank you very much, Michael, for that nice introduction. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. So yeah, let's start back at the beginning though. Like I always like to hear everyone's origin story, and I've heard yours, but for the audience, let's get a little bit of your background, how you got into technology, when you got into technology, and all the boom and bust cycles you've lived through.
Sure. So, uh, uh, my gosh, yeah, I admit to a number of decades in the in technology. I started out programming Zilog microcontrollers, doing firmware programming. At a time when you weren't just writing software, you were also having to debug the boards
hmm
themselves that you were writing software for and all that. But anyway, I came up programming microcontrollers when PCs came out and became popular. I moved to them, and they were actually the biggest devices that I ever worked with at the time,
Right,
and we're talking, 6 megahertz, and that
right.
sort of thing, and uh, that was always exciting. But the best part is I think the hardware was debugged. It worked, so you knew if you had a bug, it was just your software. You could focus on that, and then sort of the rest is history. When I went to college, I started off from high school. I went into the Coast Guard and
hmm
got some exposure to computers in the Coast Guard, and then old mainframe computers, and then uh, after that went to college after I was discharged from the Coast Guard, and uh, got some experience with sort of mainframe computers then, but I got a liberal arts degree in economics uh, because there were no computer science courses where I
hmm
went to college. That was all in the math department, and I got my with economics in the. I went to Reed College. You got your share of mathematics, linear programming and everything else. So I had a real and statistics, and I had a real good background, and then went to work for Chevron, and suddenly I found myself writing software for microcontrollers, and uh, they didn't even have. I was at a plant, and they didn't even have a job title for a programmer. They called me an instrument mechanic,
An
and
instrument mechanic.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man.
That was an hourly job, right? I got paid hourly and everything. And anyway, after that, I found I had, I would have to read all the books at night, pretty much self-taught. And at the
hmm
end of that, I found I had a knack for it, and then moved up through software development as a developer into you know technical management for some corporations, publicly traded corporations, and then started doing startups. I've done 7 startups, and founded 7 technical startup, 4 exits. Nothing big. I'm not Bill Gates, but strong 7-figure sales, and and rest, and I've gone on from there. So I've probably been a consultant now, actually more than I've worked for uh, people, and I just love it. I focus on small tech businesses, try to help them grow, and this this concept that you were talking about is a new concept, and I'm trying to build it up as a sort of a practice within my little
Got it.
consulting
Got it.
firm.
No, no, it's funny you talk about when you went from microcontrollers and you used to have to debug the board, and then suddenly you said, "Oh, well, suddenly we knew that there was only a problem with our code." I it reminds me when I got into programming, it was really through the web. And back then, you had to do a lot of cross browser testing. And I've had that moment of change in my own career where I would have to debug Internet Explorer. There was no Edge back then. It was Safari, it was Firefox, it was Chrome, and there were all these little tricks you had to perform because they all behaved a little bit differently. And then one day we just didn't have to do that as much. Yes, sometimes there are still some things in Safari mostly, but for the most part, I don't really worry about cross-browser testing, at least not the way that I did then. It was usually, hey, there's something wrong with the HTML or CSS. We have a kind of pretty much unified spec at this point
Mhm.
for most things. And so it reminds me of that moment. And I love this idea of old problems kind of repeating themselves over and over again, and the same kind of each level of abstraction kind of takes away something but gives us something in return. So I wanted to kind of note that because it really brought me back. But you finished up with this idea of non-equity financing, and I think that for those that are watching, the way that you described it to me is that a lot of times you're trying to build a SaaS product, some kind of a platform, and you've developed a whole bunch of IP, and you're trying to raise VC money while you're trying to sell $10 a month subscriptions. And most people gloss over the math on the $10 a month subscription, but you don't realize how many freaking people you need to actually make a damn living selling those subscriptions. And then you start maybe an enterprise thing, but that doesn't quite work all the time. Non-equity financing is really licensing deals is the way I was the way that it's described is, hey, you have all this tech. There are enterprises that are willing to pay a lot more money than your subscribers you're chasing after will for this tech. So we can fund
Mhm.
this through a different business model, really.
That's right, and it also. Oh, by the way, your analogy to web browsers is really good one, close to what I experienced with the hardware. But yeah. So how often have I seen this, and how often have I been in this situation myself? I've got this great idea, right? I've got a whole bunch of at the very least trade secrets or proprietary algorithms that I paid a lot of sweat equity to learn and to
Mm-hmm.
develop, right? And uh, that that know-how is worth something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but I just because oftentimes development is in plateaus. I can get to a certain level with X amount, eating beans and rice and financing it myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
To get to some certain point. But then, but then to get to that next point where you're actually selling the product, or you can validate the product, make sure it really works. Say if you're some medical device software, you got to get clinical validation,
Mm-hmm.
before you can really go out and sell it. And 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 so the instinct often is, well, let's go to venture capitalists, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
go see if we can get money either from Uncle Bart, right, or
Mm-hmm.
angels, right,
Angels.
or venture capital, right? And you need that, and you're really stuck until you get that. So I don't have enough money myself. I don't have a whole lot to show a potential investor, right? There's still a lot of risk. which translates into low valuations, right? So
Right.
for a little money, I got to give away a lot of the farm, and
Right.
so and so it just occurred to me that that boy, maybe we can do something with this know-how, and maybe or by creating the SDKs, the APIs, selling it, selling it to uh, uh, even potential customers. The other thing you can do is sell advanced licenses, to potential end users at premium prices with performance criteria and all that, and then and you can use this to help get you to that next plateau.
Hmm.
uh, you're not leaving that money on the table, right? That
Right.
potential
Right.
income on the table, and you're lowering the risk. You're putting a moat around your IP. You're showing I can license this stuff. Other people think it's pretty good. They're paying me for it. I can validate the concept. I can get, I can do the additional uh, development, and my gosh, you can do it in parallel for with finding your venture capital, but now you're lowering the risk for any future investor without diluting your equity.
Let me ask you this though, because it seems like this is an amazing path. Have you had people where you start doing the licensing and you just say, you know what? I don't know if I want to be a SaaS platform anymore. I think I like these licensing deals. Like,
Well,
because it's a much easier to build one piece of great software for one company. And a lot of times it's, hey, I'm maintaining the SDKs, I'm maintaining the APIs. Maybe I'm helping you with custom cloud infrastructure. I'll do this for 5 enterprise customers. Stick with these really high value licensing deals. Let's forget this whole, maybe it's a B2C play or it's a B to small business play or a freemium play. Let's just forget all of that.
yeah, yeah. Well, what's so nice about that is many small tech companies, they're they're analogous to a barber shop, right? How do you deliver more customers? You got to have more people, more developers, more installers, more whatever it is that whatever that mix is,
Mhm.
or you're developing the uh, 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 you're developing everything yourself. But if you're creating these SDKs and you're empowering other people to do what you do, or giving them the ability to use your know-how, now you don't need to add more chairs in the barber shop, right?
Right, right.
The chairs are out there, and so you're getting those royalties. You're getting and yes, especially I did I can't talk too much about it, but I did one very low tech uh, one that was pretty successful, and that's exactly what they did. And instead of manufacturing these devices themselves, they were able to sell licenses to uh, uh, multiple manufacturers, and we found all kinds of different applications for the device. And now, of course, now they have 5 employees, not, you know, 300.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because it reminds me a lot of Shark Tank when people come with an idea and one of the sharks is like, this is a licensing play. And sometimes you hear them go, no, 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 I want to, own the brand and whatever. And the shark is like trying to convince them to say, hey, you don't need to do all of that. You can just license. And you alluded to it earlier. You had your 7-figure exits, not like a Bill Gates exit. Who needs a Bill Gates exit?
It changed my life. 7 figures changed my life. I don't need to be in the 1%. I'm a pretty happy guy. You know what
That's
I mean?
exactly
I've
right.
gone, I've gone further than I ever thought I would. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's that. I think about that quite often as we kind of grow our agency. A lot of people say, a lot of people told us when we started building this agency, they said agencies are not investable, agencies are not scalable. But I always looked at it like, well, I really do like what I do, though. I enjoy the work. I love working on different problems. I love working with people. I don't need this big exit that people were looking for in order to be happy. And I sometimes equate it to these people will talk about IQ sometimes, and they say, there's a maximum IQ above which you will be extremely unhappy because you just relate to nobody in the world. And I think about that too, where there's sort of an income ceiling where you hit it, and it's basically, hey, I can afford all the things I ever really wanted, and I don't have any of the stress of being a billionaire, or any of the public, just being quiet. And so when we built the agency, I said I knew a lot of agency owners that had very successful agencies. They loved the work, and I equate this almost to the old ad agency model too. Is that you really you had your name on the door, and you did the work, and you loved the work, and you loved being creative, and you loved helping people. And yes, you make a great living, but no, you're not getting the Instagram exit, but that's maybe not the goal.
Yeah. And it's still very possible, especially maybe you can start licensing back your technology that you develop for others, and and do derivative work. Uh uh it's not it's achieve you can achieve being able to make more than you can ever spend.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And
so
it's a much
and
lower number than you think. And
It's it's not that. That's I mean, it's higher than you want it to be, but it's lower than you think it is. And so I just wanted to say one little story. So getting other people to manufacture, not not doing all not selling to end users, but selling to developers, or white labeling things and all that, as an end game. uh, when you do this, uh, I have my father. He sold tools, right? He was like an independent Snap-on guy, these
Yeah.
guys that go to garages and sell them tools,
I have a
and all of
Snap-on toolbox actually, yeah, from my grandfather. So it's a
fantastic. Yeah, well, that's another story for me. But anyway, one of his favorite lines is, Art, you can't fall in love with the merchandise. You know, so you got you got this beautiful thing, and it's your baby and all that. But at the end of the day, I'm not talking about not being passionate about what you do, and not building best quality stuff and making it your life, and all that. That's fine, but at the end of the day, it's a widget. You're building it to sell, and
Yep.
you can't fall in love with it. You gotta sell it, or you've got a science project.
Right, right. Yeah, you have to be able to separate your hobbies from your work. I mean, nobody knows that better than me. I grew up rock climbing. I was super, super into it. I know a lot of friends that tried to make careers out of rock climbing, and for most, it doesn't work. And in fact, sometimes you find that it actually ruins it a little bit. So it's one of those things that sometimes your work is almost better not being your passion. The way I think of it is, you fall in love with the service that you're providing, like doing good work in service of others. The line I think of is, who makes more money because I exist today? That's the, like, and that's the life of the agency owner. I say, like, who is going to make more money? Who's going to get rich because I exist today? And ultimately that kind of, will bring you back. Man, it was an old episode about a music producer. There was a film about him, and it's the second time I think I've talked about it on the podcast where I forget the name, but the film was called Supermensch, and he was a famous music producer for like Alice in Chains, and he was on the Tim Ferriss show, and he talked about this idea of his idea of success was this life of service, because he wasn't the musician, but he was doing this, he was a manager to them, and he was in service to them, and that ultimately led him to a fulfilling life that, obviously made him financially very successful, and all of that. But it all came back to, you have to love the service you provide.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. I've heard a quote that work, when done in the spirit of service, is like prayer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I love that, this symbiotic thing, of making somebody else rich. Boy, I don't hear that very often, but I truly believe it. I don't hear that from others very often. I think
It's
you hear it
it's
from you.
it's something we learned. It was one of those when we were kind of evaluating how to grow our agency. One of the things we kept thinking about is Facebook had this metric of if you could get a person who signed up to find like 5 friends within the first 5 days, they were most likely going to be a user for life or something like that. I said, well, what's that metric for us? And I always thought, I don't know exactly the numbers like that because we're a little too small to have those numbers, but the shorter I can the less time between the time you sign with me and you making your first dollar from your software that you built, that's the customer for us. That's the customer for life, is really kind of reducing that time, because people are not really coming to me for software. A lot of times they're really coming to make the dream come true for them, right? The software is the vehicle, but when you look at what they're ultimately after, how do I make this thing a success such that it's going to change my life? Otherwise, I mean, why become an entrepreneur, right? You could go to work. That's the so I have to keep that in mind. And I had somebody this week that came to me, a bit of a rescue story. Really, they had signed with another agency. They had built software. This is a very cliche story for me. It comes up all the time. Burnt a ton of money and ended up nowhere. And they want to kind of evaluate the tech. But the problem was almost never the tech. It's always this market. How do you market the tech? How was the tech built in service of bringing the users that it needed to in? How did we get that place? And sometimes they try and solve it with features. And then the thing that I always end up pointing out is, all right, well, let's look at the metrics for a second here. Every user that you've brought in wouldn't have even gotten a chance to experience the feature because they never signed up. And so that's the problem we have to solve first, because there's no single feature that's going to stop that. We could just tell people that feature exists. If you tell them it exists and they still don't sign up, it means they're still not interested, right? They're not experiencing the thing. So you have to get to the bottom of this. And so through being fractional CTO, you almost start to see these very human problems. And it's very rarely my database is falling over. That all of this stuff can be solved very quickly. The problem is that people start to forget that you're building the tech for the people. And one of the things and why I was so keen on getting an introduction to you, meeting you, is a lot of people need the capital, and they struggle to raise it. And the licensing deal, to me, like, especially once we've built the software, I'm saying you really just need to be connected to someone who's going to buy this. And it is super, super hard to do an untargeted campaign, just spray and pray over social media, trying to get random signups for your B2C product.
The other thing is, with this is the license agreements, selling your know-how, selling your know-how, which is what we're trying to do here, your existing know-how. And I even run into companies, they already have patents, they have all kinds of things, and there's different strategies, for doing that. And uh, uh, but there's a lot of subtleties, and you have to be able to get at the right level within the organization to do it,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no, so if you go into an organization, what do they have? They have a sales force, right? That goes to sells their products to the end users, right? They'll have they might have a CTO who looks beyond keeping the IT trains running on time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But but there's no real clear pathway in most organizations on, gee, how do we oh, sorry, there's a clear pathway on how to build it here, right? There's an
Mm-hmm.
engineering department and all that, but oftentimes there's not a clear pathway to get in. uh you know what can we get from someone else that would be very helpful, right?
Right.
That
Right.
we didn't think of, you know. So the engineers say, well, I need a library that does this, or I need something. But but now, how do you go from the inside sales where somebody is coming to you and they don't even know what your know-how is, and so there's actually a lot of work in doing it, and it's not for everybody, and not everybody can get there, right?
It's very hard. I'm
Yeah.
curious kind of your on the tactical level, are you relying on your existing connections for these types of deals? I mean, that's one way to get in, but I imagine you're not doing, 20,000 cold emails to try and, to try and get people in these rooms. So this, yeah, I'm curious what tactics kind of you find work to get into those rooms.
So you always start with your Rolodex, sorry, your contact list, right? That's always the place you start. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's so many, but the desk, and then I have a team, right, that I work with some for decades, right? That we just work together to do projects, and they also have contact lists, right?
Hmm.
And then you can start there, but there's all kinds of, your desk research can reveal all kinds of qualified leads that you can target. For instance, if there are patents involved, let's say you already have patents, why don't you just look at everybody who has referred to your patent, right? You have
Right.
to. Why don't you look for everybody that's doing the same sorts of things you are? Uh, uh, Look for complementary products. Well, if you have I don't know, I'm not thinking of a great example, but let's say you have a special way to make trousers, right? Well, gee, why don't we look for somebody who's making shirts? You know
Right.
what I mean? And so why don't we license our, because now they've got cross-sell opportunity, or that's kind of a low-tech example, but there are a number of things. So if you're a medical device, for instance, that does a particular scan, would the scan you're doing fit in with a CT, a
Right.
CAT
Right.
scanner, and just put it a little bit on the end and give a lot more information as the patient's going through the tube. So so those are opportunities, and and where are you going? You're going to the inventor, say, of those patents. You can get a hold of them. They love talk. Everybody loves talking about what they did, and if their product was successful, they almost always have a connection into the management who can spend money, or the head of that R&D department, or something like that. So that's how you find. Then it's good old fashioned hard work, right? After you've talked to everybody, you just start you just start finding, identifying individuals that could be people that have written papers, people that have it just you just go to work. It's nothing magic there.
It's super interesting because this is the challenge of our agency as well is getting into these the right rooms because with a product like what you're talking about, people are going to spend a good chunk of change with our product, consulting. It relies on trust, and almost nobody like Googles for a fractional CTO they can trust. They usually reach out to a friend and they say, "Hey, do you know someone who does this?" Or "Do you know an agency I can trust? Hey, I've got a $1 million project here." They don't go on Google. That's people like, "Oh, you run AdWords or Fed." Nobody's scrolling Instagram looking to get their $1 million project staffed from a Meta ad. This is happening between people. So really, networking is super, super important, and building the proverbial Rolodex is super, super important too. And I would even argue that we've spent time focusing. We've got the YouTube subscribers. We do subscribers on LinkedIn, but those are even still low quality connections. It's really these people that we've met directly that it turns into, hey, I will only talk to someone I can trust about this. And you don't just get in the room because we're connected on LinkedIn or because I follow you and like think your content is funny on X. That will not happen. You actually, I have to know you and I have to see the whites of your eyes.
Right. How did I meet you,
Yeah,
Michael?
right.
I bought 30 people lunch, right? Right. A very targeted group, right? Right.
Yep.
Uh, uh, bought 30 and handed out goofy mugs, right?
I
But
love the mug.
yeah, but told that, I tried it, and you talk about trust. It's the key to everything. So 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 my pitches are always earnest. They're always transparent. They're always looking for a problem to solve. And that's how many engagements, consulting engagements, have been successful that I've been involved with, where it's just getting everyone back to the basics. Well, what's the problem we're solving? Okay,
Right.
what is the and what are the right tools to solve this problem? We need money, right? We need money. We're not we have good ideas, but our company's not worth very much, right? What do we do? How do we get it to the how do we get to that next plateau? So, well, let's not leave any money on the table. Let's sell what you already know, what you've already built to the extent we can, right? And now, and oh, by the way, uh, uh, we're also reducing the risk for future investors because we're showing we can license the tech and we're showing it works. We're getting money to develop, to get over a few more humps, right?
Well, that's the other thing, right? The investors love when you've already got revenue coming in. That was not a requirement, I want to say, like 3 or 4 years ago. But then
Yeah.
suddenly the buck stopped and people have felt it. And now they're trying to get by it by like slapping the AI stamp on their company and thinking like, I don't need revenue or a business plan. As long as I say AI, people will throw money at me. And I'll tell you, you may hear about some of this stuff happening, but a lot of those people already have some kind of a pedigree that is they have the whites of the eye connection with the VC, which is how they're raising money, and they know they're not full of it. The problem is when us mere mortals try and do that without those connections, people, you can't really just slap the AI bumper sticker on it and hope you're going to get some money. So I
Right.
love the idea of, hey, we got to get sales. My big focus, especially with our customers, is we need to get you sales. I'm not here to help you raise money. That's a little bit of a difference between, I think, how I practice fractional CTO versus how I've seen other folks. And I've lost deals over that where they're like, I want you to help me raise money. And I'm always like, no, I don't do that part. Like, yes, I can help you pitch, but my main goal is to get you that first piece of revenue, that first customer, because without that story, I really think pitching is a waste of time because unless, of course, you really are in the a VC, you have that relationship, but just going in there to pitch your idea, I've seen so many people not raise money because they just didn't have that one or two customers to show. And even with those one or two customers, sometimes it's still hard.
Yeah. So, uh, uh, Mike, what have you done? You've identified a problem to solve, right? And so now you got to go find people with that problem, right?
Yeah.
And especially ones in situations that you're good at, which I'm sure is a long list, right? So, and then how do you find the people? I I think uh, uh, you, you know it's that old-fashioned desk research. You're reading annual reports. You're reading startup. Whatever it is. You're finding people that need customers, and maybe in particular industries that you're good at, and you're getting to the people with a compelling story, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, it's very and I'll tell you from my own business, it's very hard because there's a lot of people that do what I do. I'm not, being a software agency is not necessarily novel. I think that myself and my business partner working with us is novel. So this is one thing we've always struggled with is, being boutique, the novelty is, hey, you work directly with us. And if you like us, you'll know that we're the faces you're going to see a lot. A lot of folks also say, hey, that doesn't, the classic, that doesn't scale. You can't do. Now, I don't worry about that. I'll worry about that when it comes. I think that founders do unscalable things. And the unscalable thing that I'm doing is putting myself in front of every customer and making sure that I have my hands on every deal. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm the one doing the work. I have no issues with delegation per se, but I do think that it's very important to have that personal feel, that personal touch. And I think that that's much needed, especially now that the machine has basically made our work effectively like the machine operator, the coder in the basement is kind of a dead trope. I think it reminds I watched the old show Mad Men, and you watch this show, and basically the entire office doesn't exist anymore. There are women who connect the phone lines with the wires, right? There's every person has a secretary, and the secretary knows how to operate the typewriter and type 60 words a minute, 100 words a minute. All of these jobs are gone, and it's a completely different world, and the economy recovered. But I do see that the person who can only code and only knows how to write code, that might have been a living that is sort of falling by the wayside. And what do we offer instead? It's not just it's not the coding, it's ourselves, it's me. And when I interview team members, I'm looking for people that I can put in front of people that have that personality, that can win people over, that can build trust, that can really discuss these nitty-gritty problems that plague people. And a lot of those problems are, how do I improve the usability? How do I improve the test coverage, the security? How do I deal with this IT department and these people I'm trying to sell to? This is the kind of stuff that I think us engineers need to help people with.
Yeah. So I'm just imagining this. I'm making this up, right? But I'll bet Mr. Price, Mr. Waterhouse, and Mr. Cooper's, right? When they started, people were saying what you're doing is not scalable.
That's exactly right. I want to say it's as early as 4 or 5 years ago, when people were like, well, not scalable, not investable, not this, and we still hear that today. Although there's a very big renewed interest in agency and consulting work with this AI thing, and what I find interesting, and you tell me, because you did a lot of consulting work in the past, and I wonder how many of these themes repeat themselves over and over again. And we've talked about this, is having to evolve the pricing model. And one of the things you told me that really inspired me was this idea of betting on yourself. Because a lot of times we go into a project and we shied away from fixed bids for a long time. I got real messed up by fixed bids when we were hand coding things, and you'd go upside down, and a lot of times, your engineers would just, like, they misestimated things. And as much as you wanted to get upset, you're like, oh my God, like, you try and build a team, you try and get the estimates, you even pad the estimates, and things just don't work. So we went to time and materials. I think most agencies went to time and materials. A couple of years ago, we started pivoting away, because I said, if I could kill time tracking, I really, really want to remove this. Because for me, I hated having to go to a customer and saying, your retainer's up, we need another bucket of hours. How many hours? How long is this thing going to take? And even today now today it's different. We're way faster. I don't worry about that ever. We're always faster. That AI has helped immensely. But the question is, how do you get to value-based pricing in that world? How do you battle a world that's just always fighting to undercut one another? Because agency work can feel a lot like a race to the bottom.
I think there's two or three fundamentals, that if you can get it. One is you have to pay the same way you're getting paid, right? So you're paying your developers, not if you're doing fixed price and you're paying your developers by the hour, you're going to have trouble, right? So I need this done, and I'll pay you this for it, right?
Right,
I'll
right.
pay X for it. So that's one of the fundamental. The next thing is you'll go from managing time, right, and being efficient. You go from managing time to managing deliverables, the contract. This is what I'm going to give you. Very clear. This is what it's going to cost. Very clear. This is how you pay 50% up front, 50, whatever it is, right? And this is the change order process,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. And you have to manage the contract. We're happy to do this. It's a little more than I can do. It's out of scope. It's
Mm-hmm.
more than I could do. And then the change order process right in your master services agreement. You start that, then that process starts. Okay. Yeah, there's always a risk. Sometimes it doesn't work as smoothly. Sometimes you have to take it on the chin. Well, that's a bug. It's not a scope change. And you have all these discussions and this procedure all agreed to up front. And the key, you mentioned what the most important aspect is. You have to have a trust relationship with the client and a trust relationship with the developers.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's funny because I mean, we don't even really do change orders, at all. Like, because we sort of blended the two. We did this monthly subscription thing that we had come up with was really to solve two things. I never wanted to have to cut someone off. And I wanted to always be agile. I wanted to maintain the ability for you after the first month to say, hey, we were wrong about this. We got to change it. And I'm like, that's no problem. Second month is fresh. So you pay for each month. And if you go over hours, so to speak, like over budget internally for us, when I look, that's for me to figure out and manage amongst my staff. And I'm comfortable now that we have a very good system for that. Again, especially because of AI and the work of the machine is doing so much now, we're able to definitely tighten those feedback loops and to keep that cost under control. And then you kind of go to the next month, because the reality is when you're building very new products, I'm like, you're going to give this to users and they're going to tell you things you just didn't expect after month one. So I actually even slow people down a little bit. Our process is a little different, where I say, hey, month one, we're gonna try and get your MVP launched after month one. I don't want you to be on 160 hours a month, because I don't want you to enter month two thinking I need to give them a bunch of stuff to do, because your first job now is to get feedback on the thing we built in month one and figure out very clearly, were we right? Were we wrong? Let's rewrite the scope on this. So by slowing them down, it helps. A lot of people come to me and they go, I want the full work stream, your top one. I go, no, you don't. You don't want the full work stream, because you need to allow for time to get the feedback from the customers. And this smaller work stream is geared for you. The full work stream works for people, like you said, though, that come to me and they're like, I have a business. This is the software. Like, we got to replicate it, fix it. We know exactly what we're building. And then it's like, okay, it's 2 months, this price, boom, we're going to hit the deadline. Very different scenario, because that software is basically already validated. We're usually doing some kind of a modernization play, a complete UX overhaul, but the overall functionality, we know what we're building. It just needs to be, there's some other problem, usually a modernization thing.
What's the first phase? Discovery. What are
Discovery.
we looking at? And then uh, and then after that discovery, then you either get a chance to refine the fixed cost right after that, and they have a chance to say no, we don't want to do it. But I always, during that discovery process, I always want anybody, if they decide to stop, then it's over budget, whatever good reason they have, right?
Right,
That
right.
they have something they can use. It's a full report. It's something they can hand their engineering team, the next contractor, the next one. They have something written by experts that has the value, has value.
We also do that. That's another thing. I mean, again, things that people have told us don't scale, will hurt you. These are things that I think are core to our business, which is the 30-day out, which I said at any point you can stop. I don't want anybody here that doesn't want to be here. I won't have, I've been through clients that I've had clients that have hired contractors that have literally put them over a barrel and said, you can't get out of this contract. You have to keep using us. I go, why are we both doing this? What
Right.
are we doing to each other? So I always look at it, I said, listen, you got to give me 30 days, because usually I've hired a developer and I need to give them notice that, hey, the project is going to close up. So I want the 30 days, unless of course it's me, then I'm usually more flexible with that. It's like, all right, it is, it is what it is, if that's the case that we're running into. But I feel like that's nice. But, people want these long-term contracts. What I tell people is, I don't have a long-term contract. I have a long-term history. You can go look at my churn rate. It's super, super low. And the only reasons people have ever churned is they've gotten acquired by another company and the work got taken in-house, or there was or they sometimes, like I work with a lot of startups, they just go out of business. That happens. But otherwise, typically, with few rare exceptions over the years, we didn't have like a true conflict between us and the people we were building for, and they've been happy. Some ideas either just don't work out, or acquisition is tough. Anytime a company gets acquired, all the vendors are typically, shit
Yeah.
out of luck, basically.
Yeah.
That's-
That's all. I almost don't even call that churn. Those things are all out of your control. It's not
and that's
because they
like the
were
goal too.
dissatisfied. Yeah.
To
You
me,
know,
they succeeded.
yeah, no, that's true too. Yeah, I'll do you one better, Michael. I give my clients 24 hour.
I
They
love
only
that.
have to give me 24 hour. It's really empowering because I have that too. So I can at least I can think in my mind, every day, and sometimes I'll pitch it this way. So I have to earn the right to do business with you every day.
Yep. Yep. I
So,
like that. I
so
like that.
yeah. So it's half gimmick, half power play, right? Because
Well,
I really like that. You
happy
know,
customers aren't going to leave, and they're not going to leave because of pricing issues. These are the types of things that, I have people who do things around my house. I'm my landscaper. I'm sure there's a landscaper who will do it for $10 cheaper, so some cheaper amount. I'm just not looking because I like the guy that's doing it. And so to me, I look at that also when people are looking, and maybe there's somebody cheaper, maybe there's not. It's usually not the price that's the problem. It's they feel the value that they're getting out of you is not. And sometimes it is genuinely a bad fit. It's very hard to learn. I think that after 5 years in the business now, we finally learned this. Like your first year as an agency, you probably just take any port in a storm kind of thing. You're taking all kinds of work. By by after a couple of years, you sort of know what I could tell, like, oh, this is a home run. It's like that perfect pitch right down the plate. Like, these people should sign with us because they're going to be super, super happy. And I could tell, and I'll usually say to Justin on the side, I liked them, but that project is particularly difficult, that there's this, and this working against us. I don't think it's a good deal for us to take because you really start to stack the deck. I kind of know who a 5-star review is going to be beforehand, so I don't have to go through the pain of learning that.
no, that's right. No, yeah, it's interesting. I think yeah, it's interesting how we seem to be on pretty much the same wavelength on a lot of these things, and that's good. And I'm fond of saying that all these things I espouse now is all written in my own blood. You know,
Yeah.
I've made about every mistake you can make, and my hope is that I can help others not make them. But yeah, solve problems. Uh, Solve problems in meaningful ways, uh, and uh, and and you look for the lifetime value. You make that good living we were talking about.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you could do that,
I
yeah,
that was the other. I guess that's a good question. After all these years, what is like the single piece of advice you'd give to new entrepreneurs looking to build their businesses?
yeah. It's almost too simple, right? Find a problem, find a problem you can solve better than anyone else.
Find a problem you can solve. I like that better than anyone else.
Better than a better mousetrap, whatever that is, So what are the questions you're asking? What are the first questions you're asking? What is the problem I'm solving? How am I solving it? And why is the way I'm solving it? What differentiates the way I'm solving it uh, to anyone else who thinks they're solving that?
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. It's a very hard question. That
Yeah,
the way that I think that I've heard it described is what's your unfair advantage? That's what's
yeah,
and
yeah.
so
That's
I
good.
and that question is quite difficult. That was a very difficult question to answer for a very long time for us.
Uh-huh. And I think the other the sort of the corollary to that is in my experience it's been I've had more success doing fewer things right, so limiting the scope and limiting your scope and doing that right, doing that better.
Yeah, fewer better. I really like that focus on quality because it is that. I mean, that's the challenge as an agency owner, as you know, is when you can do almost everything. or you
Yeah.
could find a person that could do the thing. It's super hard to say, no, this is the lane I'm going to go down. This is what I do better than anybody else. And staying in that lane.
Yep. And I've got a number of these axioms I can bore you with, another one is uh, uh, yeah, a few of things, right? Oh, well, what is wisdom? Wisdom is knowing when you're done,
Knowing when you're done.
because you can always do more, right? You can always,
Right,
with
right.
everything. So, given your constraints, real wisdom is, no, yep, I'm done now. 80%'s enough, right?
80%. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
See, and the analogy is so if you're writing accounting software, you have no choice but to have those columns. The columns have to flip to the penny, right?
Hmm.
That's enough. That's what's enough there, right?
Right.
That's when you're done. But if you're doing marketing, if you're mining a database or whatever you're doing uh, 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 with a marketing database, trying to squeeze out more sales or whatever it is. That's not an exact science. If you try to get your model perfect, you're wasting time and money, right?
Right, right,
Because
right.
you'll make a lot of money with an imperfect model.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's very hard. I mean, for founders, I find especially it's very hard for them to resist the urge to add lots of features. And I think you like just right in the same vein as that wisdom is knowing when you're done is product is done when there's nothing left to remove, or a piece of writing is done when there's nothing left to remove. You want to find things to eliminate, and it's just a very hard thing. You don't realize that small, focused, targeted product is the key, and that's the challenge, I think, of our time, especially now with AI, where listen, there's no change order I can't accommodate. It's really not going to hurt me financially. It really isn't. You want to come to me with 10 features you thought up on the weekend, we'll have it done by the next Friday. But getting all of your customers to find those 10 features and use them, that's hard. You can't start Salesforce by building all of Salesforce, because nobody likes Salesforce. They're stuck with Salesforce.
That's right.
You have to become a beloved product to begin with. And you don't really build a bloated, beloved bloated product. That is not the thing. I think of the iPod, right? The original iPod, the music player with the click wheel. I always think of this as like the pinnacle of product design for me, because it was just so simple to use. You just scroll through the songs, you pick the song you want, the loading it up, all of that was, and everything down to the fact that the thing came charged, right? It comes out of the box, you don't have to charge it up. I always tell people, you got to find this little cohort, you have to find this little product, you have to build that slice, and you have to get them to really love it. Once you start adding features one at a time, those people will discover those features, but recognize that you can completely jump the shark at some point. A little Happy Days analogy there, where at some point the product won't be beloved anymore because you added too much. And I take the Salesforce example. I've never met anyone that just said, "Man, I just love Salesforce." Just what a beloved Oracle. Nobody
Yeah,
loves an Oracle
yeah,
product.
yeah,
They have
yeah.
to use an Oracle product.
That's right.
So as a new entrant into a marketplace, your goal is probably to get sucked into the beast. Build up
Yes.
something beloved, but just know your product won't be beloved anymore once the beast buys you. So
Yeah. Well, no, that's right. But it's the old adage about innovation happening in small companies, but it's the big companies that can get it out there, right? That can turn it into uh, that big success. Joe's hamburgers. Joe's hamburger stand has better hamburgers than McDonald's, right? But
right.
yeah,
But McDonald's makes, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
exactly right.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Well, you have to think about that the fast food restaurants are such a great example, like a Chick-fil-A, right? And
yeah,
and what has made them so successful is they've managed to maintain the quality, I'd say, at the
yeah,
rate that they're growing, Raising Cane's. I mean, it seems like people talk about
Yeah.
AI. There's a moment for big chicken right now. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of chicken places coming out, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Like I said, the Chick-fil-A's, the Raising Cane's. I see there's another one over here called. I forget the name. They're opening all over I said that we're having at the same time as we're having an AI moment, we're having a big chicken moment
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but you have to, they've managed to figure out how to scale quality. And
Yeah.
that's a totally different, that's a different game. But one thing I urge people to do is features won't help you do that. Chick-fil-A, they had one special sandwich
Yeah.
seasonally, but they
That's
didn't
right.
get into hamburgers. They didn't
That's
decide,
right.
oh, we're going to throw beef on here. It would kill the whole vibe. So you got to
That's
try
right.
and think of that.
What do you think? Are fewer things right better? Right?
Fewer things better. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So,
Yeah.
so we've been going for about an hour, and I
Yeah.
love at the very end. I have two questions that I ask everybody. The first one I is for new graduates, and new entrants into the job market because it's an especially tough time right now. And I love to ask people who've been around the block a bunch, what advice you would give somebody who's coming into the job market now, who feels like, hey, all the opportunity isn't there for me anymore.
Uh, it's gonna. My advice is gonna sound fairly cliche, uh, Michael. If you get that seat at the table, you get that job, right? Rem, rem, you have to. It's. I think it's best to remain humble. Remember, you have two ears and one mouth. You're sucking. You're learning everything you can. Every day's a school day, right? And everything you get an opportunity to work on, you, everything you get an opportunity to work on, uh, just uh, uh, put your all into it because you're you'll get it. I've always gotten more satisfaction from accomplishing something than I ever got on payday.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
I think
so
that's an engineering hallmark. I think
yeah,
that's why you got into this and not finance.
that's right. Yeah, but again, I know it all sounds cliche, but it's rung true. Keeps it's rung true always. And when I have opportunity to hire uh, people, hire engineers and things like that for clients, and and I sometimes I even because I do some turnarounds, right? I come into a failing company and turn them around, and so I'm actually doing line management, and that's what I'm coaching. That's the sort of coaching I'm giving people. Just uh, uh, you don't know quite as much as you think you do, but the confidence is good. I'm not saying no, you don't know, and those around you probably know more than you think they do. Right.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
There's always something to learn from everybody. It's definitely. I mean, I wish I like that it's cliche advice because I always think back to me starting my career and I said I definitely didn't do all of that. And I did aspects of it, which is how I ended up being successful. And you learn the hard way. But the idea of being an entrant into a career being difficult is not new. That's actually a cliche too. It was very hard to get started. I think in tech, I happened to I always said programming had this moment when I got into it where the supply was a lot less than the demand. So there was an entry level way to get a toehold, and all the boot camps took control of that, and really it provided a great living. There is that happening now somewhere. I'm not on the lookout for it because I'm not in the market, but I can assure you that that has been true of people in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, going all the way back through time. There was always a thing. There was always a place where the supply was less than the demand, and entrants could come in and find their way in. So I always find that seam and get yourself in there. The last question I have is, what is any good books you recommend to folks to read? Can be one or two, but through your life, anything. It can be recent.
Yeah. Uh, you're gonna laugh because it's another cliche. You got to read The Mythical Man Month,
Oh,
written
yeah,
in the
yeah, I got
'60s.
that.
You got to read that one. If it, but because it still rings very true, right? And and at the turn of the 21st century, right, when they had that Agile conference, right, where they they I think broke they uh they broke the code. They did something revolutionary there that helped overcome the mythical man month, by smaller, focused job, all that stuff. And so, anything you want to read. Who's the guy, Uncle, who's the
Bob
guy that
Martin.
was on? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've read his book 3 times. I love it. I don't agree with everything, but the concept, his approach, that whole thing, and I think he's got Clean Agile too. Read a couple of his books, and that's helped me a lot. And then the only other author I would recommend is if you want to get into, if you're running a company like a startup or something like that, look at the old, what's his name? Ah, his name just, he's this, he was popular in the '80s, business writer, Canadian. Uh, I'm sorry, his name just, I've just forgotten his name now, but he wrote a book called Management, something like Management for the Turn of the 21st Century. And, uh, and it's a nice book. He's a prolific guy. It's a very nice book that that really is a crash course in technical management. Uh,
Amazing. Amazing.
yeah. So those are really the three. If you get those in, uh, you'll get some very good general guidance that'll stay with you. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
and finally, finishing up here, where can people find you, especially those interested who want to get interested into non-equity financing? They
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Yeah. So it's bartlewin.com.
bartlewin.com. Easy. We'll put it all in the show notes, Bart.
Uh-huh.
Amazing.
Thanks
Thank
so
you so
much.
much for being on the show.
Michael, you're wise beyond your years. Thanks very much. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Thank you, Bart.
All right. Bye now.